Hi guys, I just did an unhaul, so now it's time to do a haul and show you all the books that I bought to replace the books that I'm getting rid of. Diving right in, we have some manga, we have some fantasy, we have some nonfiction, and we have a couple really pretty special editions, so let's go. Okay, start off with the manga. The majority of this is one series, so I've gone full weeb. I don't remember which of these. I think I've hauled the first volume, maybe the second. If not, here's the rest of them. This is volumes 2 through 7 of Spy Family, a manga series that I am currently obsessed with. I've talked about this a lot at this point. In this series, we follow a special agent spy. His codename is Twilight, but he's going by the name Lloyd, and his current assignment involves him getting this fake family together so that he can maintain peace between a rival country and his own. And the members of this family are quite unique in their own ways. We have the daughter, Anya. She is a telepath, and Lloyd does not know this, but Anya immediately knows that he is a spy. And then the mom is Yor, and she is secretly an assassin. Anya knows this truth about both of her parental figures, and she's trying her best to help them out along the way. And it's shenanigans, it's good times. Volume 4, they get a dog who's also precious. I've read the first 4 volumes, so I still have 5, 6, and 7 to go, but I'm absolutely loving this series, and just gonna keep buying them forever because this is so fun. Then we have like a romancy kind of shoujo series that I've gotten into, and that is the Savior's Book Cafe story in another world. And we follow this 30-something-year-old protagonist who gets ripped from her world, which is like our world, and put into a fantasy-esque world in which she has to be the savior. And she has a lot of magical powers, but she has to she has the ability to perform a lot of magic, but she has to learn spells and stuff along the way, but she just wants a quiet life. She doesn't have an option not to go to this fantasy world. This orb called God is like, no, you have to go, and she just wants a quiet life. So she starts this like book cafe in this kingdom, and like the captain of the guard kind of ends up coming in a lot, and they sort of fall in love, and it's really cute. There's another savior in this world who is not doing her job, so she ends up having to kind of like clean up after her, and it's just so fluffy and adorable. There's not a whole lot going on in this series beyond just cuteness, but I'm having fun. The book cafe, like, this would be me if I had to go to a fantasy world and I got to establish certain parameters about what my life would be. I'd be like, I'd want to run a book cafe. I'd be very much like this person. So I have the first 3 volumes, which I think are the only ones that are published in English so far, and like I said, it's just a cute, fun, fluffy series, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. Next up, we have some books that I actually formally checked out from the library. One of them I liked so much that I was like, I want this in my collection. The other one, I kind of stumbled upon a really good used copy of it for really cheap, so I returned the library edition that I had and just bought the $3 one. So first up is Meet Me in Another Life by Catriona Silvey. This is a really interesting story where these two people sort of orbit around each other through all these different lives, and then they start kind of remembering these other lives, and the fact that these two are the only people that remember these past lives draws them together. And there's a really interesting sort of mystery at the center of this. I was going crazy trying to solve it myself, and like in the best way. Like, I was so invested. I wanted to know what was really happening. This was really cool. I enjoyed this a lot. I've mentioned in the past, I like stories where two people kind of find each other again and again and again throughout all these different lives. This one isn't so much like chronologically through time, it's through like parallel lives, kind of, or like, it's hard to describe without giving it away, but this was a really interesting read. I never seen anyone talking about this, but I loved it. I felt so emotionally invested in these characters, and it was so good. So I checked it out from the library, and I was like, I need that immediately. And I bought a used version online that was apparently formerly a library copy. I've taken the jacket off of it so it doesn't look like a former library copy. It's still actually in pretty good condition, but I just thought that was funny that I ended up picking up a version that had also been from the library. And then I found The Diviners by Libba Bray at my library sale. It was $3 for a first edition hardcover. And the fun thing about this first edition is it has a really cool naked hardback as well. So I actually, like I said, had this checked out from the library at the time that I found this copy. Weird how that works out, but oh well. This is kind of a hard edition to find, so I didn't want to pass it up. Hopefully I end up liking the story. I am kind of bitter that the subsequent books in this series don't match this first cover, because I just think this is stunning. The only editions that all match at this point, to my knowledge, are like special book box editions, which is a bummer, but this first book's beautiful and I'm excited to have it. Next up, I picked up Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is like a Regency romance, but with a fantastical twist, and I'm very excited about it. This was previously self-published, but Orbit has recently picked it up, and I think the first 2 books in the series are out in the Orbit editions. The main character of this one, I think her name is Theodora, has no sense of fear or embarrassment, an unfortunate condition that leaves her prone to accidental scandal. So I think if like you like Bridgerton, this feels like a fun time. I like the fantasy element to it, that she's got like this curse on her. There's also Faye. I think she ends up falling in love with one who's an utterly ill-mannered Lord Sorcier. So yeah, I just think this sounds like a really fun time. I've heard excellent things about this and I cannot wait to dive in. At the beginning of the month, I picked up The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. The only book I've previously read by her was a fantasy YA standalone called Among the Beasts and Briars, and that was a lot of fun, so I was really curious to pick up a romance novel by her, and this was good. I thought it was very predictable, but I had a fun time. This follows a girl named Florence who works as a ghostwriter in New York for a really popular romance author. And she recently got her heart broken and she no longer believes in love. She's trying to finish up this 4-book contract that she has with the author's publisher, and she just can't find it within herself to write a happy ending. She doesn't believe in them anymore. Along with this, her father kind of suddenly passes away, and he was an undertaker. So there's a lot to do with grief and death in this book. If you're sensitive to that, just know that a large part of the plot does revolve around her father's death. As cute as the romance is, that is a big element as well. Her father and her have always been able to see ghosts. Florence tries to ignore this because it's kind of gotten her into awkward positions in the past. She's just she just wants to be normal. But when she returns to her father's funeral parlor for her father's funeral, she ends up running into the ghost of not her father, but her publishing editor, who she did not previously know was dead. It happened quite suddenly, and they end up getting to know each other a bit better because she's the only one that can see him, and he's really confused about the fact that he's dead, and ghost romance ensues. So again, I thought this was a little bit predictable, but I had a really fun time. Like I said, it does deal a lot with death and grief, which is kind of heavy for a romance novel, but I thought it balanced well. It had its very cute moments as well. So really liked this book, and I was really happy to pick it up. My most recent entry into my Penguin Clockbound Classics edition journey is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I picked this one up because the movie came out this month. Still haven't seen it. Have heard very, very negative things about it. I still plan on watching it just for fun, maybe with a glass or 2 of wine, but I did like the excuse to read this book. The only Jane Austen books I've previously read have been just Pride and Prejudice. I meant to read Sense and Sensibility earlier this year. Didn't happen. It will eventually, but because of the movie, this one kind of snuck its way up to the highest priority for my Austen list. This deals with a woman named Anne Elliot, who is 27 years old and single with no prospects. She, 8 years prior, actually was persuaded to give up the love of her life, just that because it wasn't a good match at the time. Captain Wentworth, her love interest, comes back 8 years later and kind of enters her social circle again. This book is a lot about angst and yearning and regret. I believe this was the last book that Jane Austen wrote. She died before it was published. A lot of people call this like her most mature novel. I think mostly because like the protagonist is a bit older. It's a little heavier. This wasn't like laugh out loud funny like Pride and Prejudice was. I also couldn't believe the same woman who wrote Mr. Bennet, who is one of my favorite fictional dads of all time, also wrote Sir Walter Elliot, who is like the worst dad ever. Just, you know, variety, I guess. I was just like, oh god. But this was a really good time. It was only like 250 pages, so it was a pretty quick read. I felt very invested. It has a lot of beautiful quotes. Ultimately, though, I wish that Anne and Captain Wentworth had had a little bit more screen time, or page time, that is, together. We're told that they had this romance 8 years prior, but, like, there are no flashbacks to it. There's really even no, like, remembering of certain events. It's just that they were once in love, and then she had to give him up, and now they're both really sad and heartbroken still, even 8 years later. I wanted a little bit more between them, but I get that the point of this book is, like, the angst. So the ending was really good, though. I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite Jane Austen, but I think I've sort of put myself at a disadvantage by starting with Pride and Prejudice. So I still really quite enjoyed this, and I'm happy to add it to my collection. Next up, we have some nonfiction. I recently picked up Fuzz by Mary Roach, which is a book about when nature breaks the law, how we handle that, going from like felonies to misdemeanors. The book starts with like what happens when an animal kills somebody, and I think kind of explores the less severe incidents after that. It's really interesting. I've only read the intro so far, but I like Mary Roach's writing voice a lot, and I think there's a lot of humor sort of in the situations. Death aside, it talks about futile military actions against birds, jaywalking with the animals, pests. In the intro, she talks about how people in the past have literally served eviction notices to, like, rat colonies that are infesting a house, which is just so delightfully weird. Humans are so strange. Their interactions with animals are so strange. And I think this is going to be a really interesting and engaging nonfiction read. I'm trying to read a little bit more nonfiction, and I think this is going to be a fun place to start. And then my local bookstore had another book by the same author called Spook Science Tackles the Afterlife. This is interesting because I think this is a very, like, unscientific topic, and it's interesting that, you know, she's trying to take a more skeptical view and, like, explore this very intangential thing. I like the combination of that. I don't consider myself very religious, but the idea of an afterlife or, like, reincarnation has always been, like, very fascinating to me. I don't know, I'm very eager to read this. So the blurb mentions that in an attempt to find out what happens after we die, Mary Roach brings her tireless curiosity to bear on an array of contemporary and historical soul searchers, scientists, schemers, engineers, and mediums, all trying to prove that life goes on, or disprove that life goes on after we die. So again, interesting topic. I picked it up for $5, and hopefully I like it. I also found a used copy of a very popular nonfiction read, and that is Bill Bryson's The Body, A Guide for Occupants. I think that is a very charming subtitle. Again, this is really popular. I found this pre-owned. It doesn't even look like it's been opened. The spine is perfectly intact, and I'm very curious to read this. I haven't read any Bill Bryson before. This is probably his most popular book. It's definitely at the top of a lot of nonfiction lists that I see. I get a lot of anxiety about my body and, like, what is happening medically a lot of the time, so I'm interested in reading, like, how he breaks down the different functions of the body, and, like, I don't know, it seems very interesting. So the back says that Bill Bryson guides us through the human body, how it functions, its remarkable ability to heal itself, and unfortunately the ways it can fail. Full of extraordinary facts, your body made of a million red blood cells since you started reading this, and irresistible Bryan-esque anecdotes, the body will lead you into a deeper understanding of the miracle that is life in general, and you in particular. As I've said before, I'm not really a religious person, and I'm just, like, fascinated by the idea of, like, how the body functions, and I know there's, like, a lot of discourse about whether, you know, it's intelligent design or not, or, like, you know, nature just sort of evolving to this point. I'm very curious to read a book that kind of breaks it down into more digestible parts. So I'm very curious to read this. I'm hoping his voice is like, you know, or his writing voice is good. I have high hopes because this is so popular, so I'm excited to get into this one. Back into the fiction, I picked up the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series. It's called A Curious Beginning. This is like a historical fiction mystery, I believe, that has what I've heard is a very satisfying slow burn romance, like multi-book slow burn. I love that shit. I'm very excited. I don't know the specifics beyond that. So the first sentence of the blurb says, London, 1887. After burying her spinster aunt, orphaned Veronica Speedwell is free to resume her world travels in pursuit of scientific inquiry and the occasional romantic dalliance. As familiar with hunting butterflies as with fending off admirers, Veronica intends to embark upon the journey of a lifetime. So this sounds like a lot of fun. I've heard great things about this series. I'm not sure when I'll get into it, but I found this used copy online for a couple of bucks. It is definitely a little worn, but that's okay. It's a paperback. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. Another good used book find was Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I really enjoy these new editions of his book that have kind of like the watercolor illustrations on the front. I recently picked up Stardust that matches this, but this was like half the price of that because I found it pre-owned, so that was fun. This is up there on the list of like Neil Gaiman books that I haven't read that I really need to because everyone seems to really like it. I don't know a lot about what it's about other than that it is amazing, apparently. And I have liked Neil Gaiman's writing in the past, so I wanted to pick up one of his more popular books that I haven't read yet. And the back does not mention very much of what it's about beyond a man returning to his childhood home to attend a funeral. Maybe monsters and magic? We'll see. I'm excited. Then I grabbed A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This is a sequel to A Psalm for the Wild Built. I believe that came out last year. This novella series follows a tea monk and a robot who just kind of travel the land helping people out. And it's what I would describe as a cozy sci-fi read. The sci-fi is like not super, you know, cerebral or technical. It's more like, it feels fantastical, but it's a robot, you know? And in this world, robots were previously used for like physical labor and like factories and stuff, very much how we like treat technology today. But they sort of gained sentience and morally humanity like didn't feel comfortable sort of enslaving a sentient robot society, and so they let them go into the wild, and they're not very much seen by humans these days. So this tea monk runs into one, and it's the first interaction between people and robots in a very long time. I really liked the robot in the first book. I thought they were so charming. This also has non-binary representation, which is fun for a sci-fi setting as well. Both the monk and the robot identify as non-binary, so that's fun. And I just love the meat of this book and like what it's about, where like you don't have to have a specific purpose in life to like be living a life worth living, you know? I don't know, it's so charming, so cute, and I can't wait to read the sequel. I don't really quite know what it's going to be about plot-wise, but it's more about the vibes. Another novella I picked up recently is A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. I believe it's a series. I know there's 2 out at the moment. The next one's A Mirror Mended. It's sort of like this one in particular is a feminist reimagining of Sleeping Beauty. I don't know much about it beyond that. I've heard this is pretty funny. Otherwise, oh, that's funny. This quote says, like Into the Spider-Verse for Disney princesses. Interesting. I picked this up pre-owned. I've been curious to read Alex E. Harrow for quite some time, and this feels like a safe place to start where it is so short. I'm very excited to read this. I love a good fairy tale reimagination. I don't know if this qualifies as a novella. It's kind of on the edge there. It's 240 pages, but that is T.K. Fisher's Nettle and Bone. This is a very popular new release. I requested this on NetGalley quite some time ago and got rejected, and I'm still feeling a little bitter about it, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna read it. This has to do with a princess whose sister got married off to a really cruel, I think he's a king? Oh, a prince. Okay. So the main character wants to help her sister get out of this horrible situation, but our main character is not like the most capable person. She's not the fantasy badass hero with like a knife strapped to her thigh. She's not like other girls, you know, she just wants to sit home and knit. So the fact that she must embark on this adventure to save her sister is a little overwhelming. She ends up enlisting in the help of a witch and I believe a chicken that is possessed by a demon. I don't know much about it beyond that. I've heard it's very funny and I'm so excited. I love a good fantasy standalone. I've heard nothing but good things about T. Kingfisher's writing and I'm very excited to pick up my first one by her. So I cannot wait to read this. I'm thinking maybe I should do like a little novella readathon at some point. Let me know down below what you think, because I think this would make a fun reading vlog. Next up we have a couple special and signed editions. First up being the adult Fairy Loot July pick, and that is The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. And if you watched any of my recent videos, you'll know I loved this book. I got this as an ARC and it was so fun and so charming and so heartfelt. It's a standalone fantasy romance that involves zombies and undertaking, and it's so bizarre, but I love it so much. The romance at the heart of this is so cute. If you like You've Got Mail, it's got kind of that element to it where these two people who don't really like each other end up undertaking a pen pal relationship, and they don't know that they're writing to the person that they think they don't like. So that's a really fun element as well. The zombie thing is like unlike any other zombie story I've ever read. I don't like zombies typically, but I think the way it was handled in this one was really unique. I like the fact that Megan Bannon put so much focus on like honoring these people and giving them a proper like death ritual even after they've been sort of zombified. I just thought that was something you don't see a lot in books like this, so I really liked that element, and it's just so quirky and cute and I love it. And this is the Fairy Loot special edition with these really cute sprayed edges. The colors are kind of inverted from what the traditional one is, so like the official paperback I think is more of this teal color with like pink accents, so I really like that they kind of changed it up for this. There's also really cute like Polaroid fan art of your characters on the end pages, and it's adorable. So I was so excited that Fairy Loot did a special edition of this book, especially considering how much I loved it. It's rare that I get a Fairy Loot book that I've already read because I'm never that caught up on NetGalley, but I did it this time. I'm excited. Speaking of ARCs I'd already read by the time I got them from Fairy Loot, This Vicious Grace by Emily Theed. I've also recently read this one. Actually, I had the audiobook as the ARC, and I loved the audiobook narrator for this. I thought her performance was so great. It was very engaging. She brought a lot of vulnerability and a lot of strength to this character that is plagued with self-doubt. It was just a beautiful story, and I thought the narrator did an excellent job. This is the Fairy Loot edition, so it's got the UK cover, which is very different from the US cover, but I like the vibes of this. I like that you got kind of more of like the illustrations that mean something more after you've read the book. And there's also sprayed edges with a very faint kind of lemon pattern, which is fun. And yeah, I loved this book. This deals with a sort of savior character who's having a hard time controlling her powers. Our main character, Alessa, is meant to partner up with a Fonte, which is a person who has magical abilities. Unfortunately, she's accidentally killed her first couple of Fontes, so she's trying to figure out how to navigate her power that just feels really overwhelming. It's not working the way it's supposed to. And she's starting not to be able to trust the people around her because there's this doomsday event that's like about to happen and nobody trusts her to actually be able to save their island. So she ends up hiring a bodyguard, and it's very Grumpy Sunshine, and I love that. And if you love a bodyguard trope, this has that, and it's fabulous. And he quickly becomes the only person that she knows that she can trust. So this was a really fun adventure. It's the first book in a series. I don't know if it's going to be a duology or like more than that, but I'm very much looking forward to the sequel. This was a lot of fun. And then finally, in books that I actually read as ARCs before they were published, which is very unlike me, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I loved this book so much. Again, I think I read all three of these within like the same month, and it was just like, it was a banging month. It was great. This follows Sam and Sadie, who they are childhood friends, and they become creative partners. We follow their friendship and relationship through like 30 years, starting in the 90s, and you get a lot of like classic video game references. It was just really fun to read about like the creative process, what brought these two characters together, what tore them apart, what brought them back together again. It truly feels like an emotional saga, and I thought it was excellent. Gabrielle Zevin is so talented. I read one of her middle grade books, Elsewhere, when I was in middle school. I actually got this book signed. I went to an author event and got to meet her, which was really cool, and I told her Elsewhere gave me my first existential crisis, and this one gave me my most recent one. So she actually signed this one and dedicated it and said, "To Lexi, here's to existential crises." So I thought that was really fun and charming. Thank you, Gabrielle Zevin. I had such a blast at that event. I'm so excited to own this. This is actually the second copy that I've purchased. The first copy that I purchased is still on the way. I bought the special edition from Waterstones that is holographic. I did not know that when I ordered it, but I've seen pictures and it is beautiful. And it also has really pretty light blue sprayed edges, and it is also signed. So I've been trying to cut down on books that I own multiple editions of, but I loved this one so much that I'm excusing it. I'm justifying it this time. All right, and that wraps up my most recent haul. I am trying to cut down on the amount of hauls that I'm doing throughout the year, trying to borrow more from the library and stuff, but I do love my special editions, and when I love a book, I want to add it to my collection, so I'm trying to reduce my book spending, but I know it's not gonna stop. Thank you guys though so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to follow my socials down in the description box below. Comment, like, subscribe, all that, and as always, have a lovely day. Bye.